Hello there, thank you for joining me once again for a video talking about movies and Blu-rays. The topic of discussion today is going to be Masters of Cinema Blu-rays that I have watched during this lockdown period. And the reason I'm making this is because quite a few people enjoyed the videos I made talking about the Criterion Collection films I'd watched during lockdown. And then also people enjoyed the top 10 Masters of Cinema released list that I made recently. So I thought I'll just show you what I've been watching during the last few weeks or so. I enjoyed all of these films that I'm about to talk about, so you can happily take them as recommendations of films to watch. All of these films are Region B Blu-rays, except for one of them, which is multi-region, but I'll talk about that one when I get to it. So just be aware that if you are going to buy these, you will need a Region B Blu-ray player to play them. Without further ado, let's just get talking about the films. And I'll talk about that first one that is multi-region, not just Region B. The film is Hard Times. This is starring James Coburn and Charles Bronson, directed by Walter Hill. Now, Walter Hill may be a director you're familiar with. He made some really great films like Streets of Fire and The Driver. But he's maybe someone that doesn't get talked about a lot. I think he's a great American director. And you see that he has a lot of talent and a lot of precision and skill in directing. And this is definitely seen in Hard Times. It's a period piece set in New Orleans, and it's all about street fighting and the kind of crime that goes on around illegal street fighting. Now, Charles Bronson plays this quiet, enigmatic, very silent figure who is extremely powerful, extremely strong, almost unbeatable. And James Coburn plays the kind of guy who's pushing him into this and trying to manage him, but he makes a lot of bad decisions, and it ends up that Charles Bronson has to do the cleaning up work for him. Although the film isn't a Western, it's one of those films that follows all of the Western genre trappings. It's about this silent but powerful figure coming into a town and then trying to set right all of the wrongdoings and bringing justice for all of the people of the town. And that's basically what the film is. Anyway, it's one to take a chance on. Great actors, a great director as well. Please do get familiar with Walter Hill if you haven't watched anything by him before. This next film is by one of the greatest American filmmakers of the mid-20th century, but it's often seen as one of his lesser works, and I totally disagree with that. The film is Boomerang. This is directed by Elia Kazan. It's essentially a police investigation / courtroom drama film where this priest is shot down in the middle of the street, but no one quite saw who the killer was. And then this lawyer is trying to defend this guy who is probably innocent, but we aren't quite sure. It's a great film, and I think it set the tone for many courtroom dramas that followed. I think it's probably very easy to look at modern courtroom dramas, or ones that came after this, and then look at this and go, oh well, this isn't actually that special. But I think it does have a lot to offer, and it has great performances from Dana Andrews and Lee J. Cobb, and brilliant direction from Kazan. So I would thoroughly recommend this if you're a fan of Kazan and you haven't seen it, or if you just like police investigation dramas. This is great. Another one I watched recently, Daughter of the Nile by Hu Shaoshen. Hu Shaoshen was part of this wave of filmmakers like Edward Yang, who were making films in Taiwan which went against the typical government-controlled or government-approved type of filmmaking. And these filmmakers were stigmatized for this, and it was only when the films were shown on a world stage that they became really appreciated. I think of that film movement, Edward Yang gets the most conversation about his films because he's made brilliant films like A Brighter Summer Day and EE, but I think Hu Shaoshen should get more attention. He made this film, which is a very quiet film, and it preceded his film A City of Sadness, which is probably his most talked about film, because that was one that really gave him global status as a filmmaker. But this is a great one. This really is great. The film centres on this young woman who is trying to raise her younger sister and keep her brother in check because her dad works out of town and her mother has passed away. Her brother is involved in crime and gang stuff, and the younger sister is already showing tendencies towards thievery and crime, so she's trying to keep her on the straight and narrow. She's struggling because she's trying to hold down this job working in KFC. And this is funny because I think this is the film where I've seen KFC, so Kentucky Fried Chicken, the most on screen. It's really interesting seeing KFC and people loving fried chicken. But that's not the point of the film. I'm not trying to be derivative or anything. It's a great film. I'm not doing it justice here. And the title, Daughter of the Nile, comes from this famous Japanese manga that was famous at the time about this character who is very similar to the main woman in this. So yeah, I would thoroughly recommend this, especially if you've not seen any Taiwanese cinema. This is brilliant. Oh, if you're enjoying this video, please do consider subscribing to the channel and liking this video and getting involved in the comments, because I do lots of videos like this about Blu-rays, Masters of Cinema and the Criterion Collection. Anyway, back to the main video. The next one I watched, Kwaidan, and this is the new release. This is the latest release from Masters of Cinema. I did a recent video doing an unboxing of this and comparing it to the Criterion edition, so I'll link up to that and link in the description if you want to watch that. It's a great film, a great anthology ghost story film. Kobayashi, one of the greatest Japanese filmmakers of all time. Pretty much what I said in that other video. So yeah, thoroughly recommended. I watched another of the limited edition Masters of Cinema releases. It's A Fistful of Dynamite, Sergio Leone. This is a great film. I don't think it's as high up as Once Upon a Time in the West or The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, but it's certainly showing a lot of what Leone was good at. He makes these sprawling epics full of action and suspense and drama, and it's over the top a lot of the times, but that's why we love these spaghetti westerns. The film is what's often referred to as a Zapata western because it teams up a Mexican hero with a American or otherwise white hero. What's interesting though is Rod Steiger plays the Mexican guy in this film, and obviously Rod Steiger isn't Mexican, so it's a bit of a weird casting if you ask me. I think it's just one of those anachronisms. It's just how the studios were at the time. They weren't properly casting people. But Rod Steiger is still great in this film. James Coburn is great, but his Irish accent is a bit ropey at times. But the action and the spectacle is exactly what you would expect from a Sergio Leone film. And a great Ennio Morricone soundtrack, as always. So Fistful of Dynamite, great film. Another Western watched during lockdown, and this one is completely different to A Fistful of Dynamite. It's The Man from Laramie. I often think that Anthony Mann is one of the greatest Western directors of all time when you look at films like Winchester 73 and Man of the West and The Man from Laramie. It stars James Stewart, who you can't help but sympathise with because he is often the pure American hero. But this was kind of later in his career, when he was moving towards more psychological roles. He wasn't just the bright-faced young hero. This is around the time when he was working with Hitchcock in Rear Window and Vertigo, and this film does delve more into the psychological nature of his character. As the artwork would kind of depict, it's a man looking for revenge. He's trying to find out who killed his brother, and he has some ideas, but he has to work out who it actually is before he takes action. It's a great Western, and I'd thoroughly recommend this. Next, I watched A New Leaf, the Elaine May film, starring Elaine May and Walter Matthau. This is such a hilarious comedy about this guy who was rich, but spent all of his money and is now broke, and he needs to find out how he can get more money. And of course, the obvious answer is marry a rich lady. So he tries to find a rich lady to marry. He ends up meeting Elaine May's character, and he's conspiring to kill her and just take all of her money. The characters are so well written and so acted, it's hilarious. And if you want just a kind of almost screwball comedy-esque film, A New Leaf is great. Another hilarious film I watched is Ruggles of Red Gap, directed by Leo McCarey, starring Charles Laughton as the hilarious titular character of Ruggles. Laughton plays this servant to this rich English guy who loses Laughton in a bet to this American couple who Laughton sees as almost backwards and a bit hillbilly in a way. So he has to go to America and become their servant, and it's when he's there that he disrupts everything and people end up loving him, but they get him all wrong. They think he's someone else. It's so funny, and Charles Laughton is so almost camp and prissy in this role, but his delivery of every line, he can just deliver comedy in a look. I mean, Charles Laughton, one of the greatest actors of all time. Leo McCarey as well, a great director. He's no stranger to comedy because he made screwball comedies like The Awful Truth. He made Duck Soup with the Marx Brothers. And, you know, he's also done serious dramas like Make Way for Tomorrow. A great director, really great director. And Ruggles of Red Gap, such an amazing film. I love this so much. And the last one of these Masters of Cinema films I watched during lockdown, it is Fedora. This is Billy Wilder's, I think, misunderstood masterpiece. It's one of the last films he made. I think it's the penultimate film. Many people dismiss this film as retreading the same ground as one of Wilder's earlier masterpieces, Sunset Boulevard. And I agree, it does have similarities. You know, you've got William Holden playing the central character, a very similar character, someone who is trying to investigate this movie star who is now aging and is not relevant as such in their career anymore. It's a commentary on the film industry at the time of making this in the 70s. There's a line in this about those guys with beards in the industry, referring to like Scorsese and Coppola and George Lucas. It's very autobiographical in a sense. You can see that he is almost like the character of Fedora. He says the character of Fedora is like a composite of all of the great actresses he worked with, like Marilyn Monroe and Marlene Dietrich. I really, really do think this film is misunderstood. So if you've seen Fedora, please let me know what you think of it in the comments and if you agree with me, because I loved this film. So that just about does it. Those were all of the films that I've watched from the Masters of Cinema label during this lockdown period. I hope you've enjoyed me talking about these. If you've been watching any Masters of Cinema releases, please do let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on them. I will be back with more videos on Blu-rays and the Criterion Collection and Masters of Cinema very soon, so stick around on the channel. And if you want to watch more videos by me, just click whatever's going to appear on the screen now, because I've got so many videos recommending great films for you. Anyway, until next time, have a great time watching films.